channel is welcome to the episode of Tatami Talk. My name is Juan. This is my triple partner Anthony. This is a judo podcast for judo players by two judo players. Now, as you can see, I'm in a non-disclosed secure location at my place where I normally shoot at, but my damn computer is giving me today, so I'm doing it on the phone. Yeah. So, Anthony, how you doing?
So, for those who listened last episode, I'm back home now, which is great. It's probably why you hear my mic sounds normal. But I actually ended up buying a new laptop to edit that episode.
So you did buy it. So they made an announcement and you're like, ooh.
Yeah, I bought a new laptop to edit that. My laptop was okay to record, but it wasn't okay to compile and render everything. So I bought a new laptop. I'm going to be giving you my old laptop. We just talked about it. So because you're having problems, which is why you sound like that. And then we had to delay the recording by half an hour.
Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But I'm back home. After we do this, I need to go get a haircut because I canceled my haircut appointment right before I left for the family emergency. And at this point, I haven't cut my hair in 3 months. But yeah, it's great to be back home. I did teach class yesterday, but I'll start training again next week. So
yeah, Monday's actually next week's gonna be pretty big for us because next week on Monday, I go see my doctor in the morning. And if he gives me the all A-OK, I can get back on the mat for some physical training, he said, which I've been cheating a little bit, doing a little bit in Newaza. But hey, I'm even thinking like my goal was like, I'm gonna wait till July. Okay, I'm gonna wait till July 1st, get back on the mat then. I'm still chomping at the bit that if he gives me the okay tomorrow, I might do class tomorrow night. What do you think?
Okay. I think you should start off with just uchikomis and start off light. We can stick together. Like I re-injured my rib a little bit in my last training session before I left Maryland. So I'm going to start off slow, and I also haven't been really exercising. I've been drinking a lot. So yeah, that's lots of stuff. But I will say that during this trip, I kind of like distanced myself from actually judo a little bit. I did show up to class one time, right? But I wasn't checking our Hollywood Judo gym desk, to see who signed up, responding to messages. I wasn't looking at judo YouTube videos. I wasn't reading judo books, and I was just mostly enjoying life. Like, it was a nice time to step away. Like, it actually felt kind of relaxing. Like, I actually had a vacation. And not saying I'm quitting judo. I'm excited to go back. But
you're not ending the podcast.
Yeah, it's really nice to just not be thinking about judo 24/7 because of the family stuff that was happening. My mind just wasn't into it. Even that one time I showed up to class, I was just not into the training session because I had other stuff on my mind. So it was just nice to step away from it. And it's also nice to go home not super sore.
I like being super sore personally. I like the feeling of being beat up a little bit and get a little owies, I like the feeling of that. I miss it.
So it is really making me reprioritize my trips in the future to Japan. I might not pack a gi with me anymore. I might not train out there. I don't know. We'll see. But it did make me think about stuff like that. Like vacation. Maybe I should just not train. But
yeah. So what was I gonna say? Before I introduce the thing, I'm going to say one more thing. I wanted to shout out to a lot of our fans that left us a few more comments. We got some personal comments about our last episode because people were surprised that we put it out episode, even though we said we were possibly not going to. So thank you for the support out there. Thank you.
We made it work. I made it work.
Yeah, we did it.
I did have to pack 2 laptops with me, like my work laptop and then my personal laptop. And then I bought another laptop. So I carried back 3 laptops. My backpack was so heavy. And then the taxi driver, when he opened the trunk, my laptop fell out of the trunk onto the floor.
Oh, no.
And luckily, I padded everything, packed it correctly, so nothing was damaged. But yeah, it was hard, but we made it work. And personally, I don't think the last episode was as interesting, but an episode's an episode. So some people, I think some people do enjoy just hearing us talk at each other for like an hour. But this is a long episode, and hopefully the quality of the content and discussions we have will make up for last episode. and I don't want to make it sound like it's another episode where we talk shit about BJJ, but I think the cultural differences between the two was really interesting and something that we should discuss given the context of the matter that we discussed. But
Okay.
yeah, I'll leave it.
Well,
I'll leave it to you to
all right.
introduce our yeah.
Well, today we re-interviewed Ajax Tadehara, former U.S. national team member, international competitor. We actually had him on the show back on episode 59, and now he's back for episode 108. So, without any further ado, let's get to the interview. Everybody, so we're gonna have a friend of the channel on this show right now. We have Ajax Tadehara, former national team member, former international competitor in judo. He was back on episode, I want to say it was back on episode 59, and now this is episode 108. So, how you been?
Good enough. Been somewhere in the middle, sure. Lots of ups, lots of downs. I try to remember my successes.
That's one of the reasons why we want to have you on the show. It's like you went dark for a while. Like I was looking for you on Instagram and stuff, sent you a few messages. I went to your dojo page, went to your personal page. I didn't go to your wife's page. That's just rude, I thought. Anthony tracked you down and stuff. He did his little bloodhound stuff, found you on Reddit or something. I don't know what. But how are you doing? Like, what happened, dude? Where'd you go?
Yeah, everything. Kind of just in general, like a broad concept. As I get older, I kind of try to like work in the shadows a little more. Try to be less public, like just mind my own business and leave other people alone if I can. Not like in a rude way, but a lot of stuff. So essentially, I was working kind of like 3.5 jobs. So I'm a full-time realtor, and then I was running Schnauzer Judo, right, the judo club myself. Like I didn't have any administrators, managers. I had 2 assistant coaches that also both had full-time jobs. And so there would be a day where just neither of them shown up, and like I wouldn't know, like they just wouldn't show up, and I'd be like, oh, it's time to start. Or they'd both show up and we only have like 2 or 3 kids. And it's like, oh, dude, we have too many instructors for this class size. Yeah. And then I do some strength and conditioning coaching for specific athletes. So it's kind of like a little side hustle, but I don't really promote that or do that. Like I'm not trying to build that business. I just help some people whenever I can. And then I was working for a startup company like every other Saturday. So it was just a ton. And then of course, on top of that, I ended up having some health issues. And so I recently had 2 levels of artificial disc replacement in my cervical spine. I had bulging discs. They were pushing on my spinal cord. And so they're like, doctors like, yeah, I mean, if you get like medium whiplash, that'll sever your spinal cord. You'll be quadriplegic. And you're losing nerve. I was in a ton of pain, right? Chronic pain. And then of course I was like losing, like my left leg was super weak. Just going upstairs, I could feel my left leg was like not strong at all. I had to try way harder. My left arm was getting smaller than my right arm. Left leg was smaller than my right leg. Like the signals just weren't on. It was crazy. And so, so I was kind of just struggling with some in-house dojo drama, like with the building I was renting from, and I felt pretty like kind of cornered with restricted on how I could use the space and how I could promote my business and how I could grow. So I just kind of decided, man, I'm gonna be done teaching judo, done running the club. If I do, like, I might come back in the future, but and run a club. But I'm just gonna restart. I figured, instead of like trying to take a hiatus and come back at the same thing, like let's just overhaul the whole thing if I ever do. And so I got off Instagram like way back last fall. Haven't been on hardly at all. I don't check the messages. I don't post. And my Facebook time is pretty limited. I kind of just try to promote the real estate business on Facebook and say happy birthday to people I truly like, And so, totally. I kind of just went off grid there. And then of course I'm holed up in like a small town in Idaho that there's not like, I don't have any other judo friends here or any other like connection to national folks very much. So I was just trying to take care of the mental health and had neck surgery. So I did have neck surgery, just to clarify that, and I'm recovering well. And so, totally. Sorry to just leave you hanging. Appreciate you checking in on me though.
It's totally cool. Like I wasn't honestly how your business is running, because when last we talked, you were talking about you're gonna get this big facility set up for you guys, multiple martial arts in there, one place. So I just want to know how you're doing. And I'm sorry to hear about your spinal surgery, your stuff, because we we all have injuries and stuff. We all get hurt, but being told as a grappler, as a judo player, and being told that, well, if you get whiplash, you can be a quadriplegic, that has to be one of the most scariest things to hear. Because it's such a big part of your life, probably, you know, your international competitor and stuff, and you're getting told, well, I can't do judo no more unless I get the surgery. And then after you get the surgery, sounds like you're not doing that much judo afterwards. Do you plan on going back to doing judo just as a practice or just on your own at all?
Yeah. It's intimidating for sure. Like you said, like we'll just say like it's scary, and you're like, oh man, like, I mean, that's the most, like I drove like I had a newborn baby in my car. You know, I'm watching every other driver. I'm counting 3 full seconds at every stop sign. I'm watching cars approach behind me, like, don't rear end me, you know? And yeah, but actually, like, it's also like we seen a kid here at Idaho. He was in the like state wrestling tournament, and he had some neck injuries like that, and they kind of told him it was a risk, and he was like, it's fine. And literally his opponent just did like a snap down, and it did whiplash him, and he is like lifelong changed. Like it really wrecked him, and you know, he's on the mat just laying there. It's like, what happened? It was just a normal head snap, like high school wrestling 101. It's not a big deal. And because he had that underlying injury, that was all it took. It was so it really like sat home for me. I'm like, oh man, I remember that kid from like 2 years ago. Like that's the reality, you know. Of course, the high school kid, the doctors don't, you know, I can still do it. I worked all year for state, and I'm the number whatever seed. I'm going to go in and tear it up anyways. And it was just one of those bleak realities. So, but it's pretty crazy, like compared to some other spinal surgeries and stuff. The artificial disc replacement, dude, my doctor just said, 6 weeks and you're good to go. And I said, I could go back to like judo, like and he said,
just like a real judo guy.
He's like, he says, let's give it 8 weeks for that. But at 6 weeks, I have no other restrictions besides not sparring and, you know, so lifting weights. I'm lifting weights again. I'm at physical therapy. I'm at week 6.5 right now. Like I just hit my 6 week mark. Yeah. So it's still pretty fresh. I've only done one physical therapy, but 100%. The issue for me is I don't have any real judo in this town, you know.
That was going to be my next question, because you told us, well, was one of you're one of the few judo clubs in the area. So where would you go to do judo?
Yeah, I would have to go to the university club, which my dad runs. But the university restrictions are super tough. They kicked him out of the old room, put him in a new room. And so he's got like anywhere from 1 to 5 white belts. Like, not to be a total diva, but I will be a total diva. Like, I'm not going to go there to work out. You know what I mean? Like anytime, the last 5 times I went there, it's just him being like, oh yeah, Ajax, shows you also shows how you do that. Show these guys need to see it, you know? And it's just like, I'm not actually doing judo there. I'm just teaching. Yeah, but I will be joining some probably Brazilian jiu-jitsu. There's a wrestling club that's pretty big that occasionally has adult practices. So I might, you know, it's like he's a D1 2-time All-American wrestler that runs it, you know, and he's probably like he's a pretty lean, like 225, 230 guy. So he's really good for me to scrap with, you know, and so I'll get my workouts in. But yeah, other than that, he's like, yeah, we got cage fighters that get the disc replacement. Long term, all the studies show it's better than a fusion. You're going to have less issues down the line. So yeah, like get back to it if you want to. And I'm like, cool. So yeah, I'll work out. I'll be on the mats again in some capacity.
That's how we all are. Like I dislocated my shoulder back, like people who know, watch the show, listen to the show know I dislocated my shoulder back in December at Winter Nationals. And like first time I was asking my doctor, was like, so when can I get back on the mat and stuff? Well, Juan, you need surgery first. Like, really, it's that bad? Like, Juan, your rotator cuff is destroyed. You don't have a rotator cuff no more. It is gone. Your shoulder shouldn't be sinking this low.
Blew up like the Death Star. Yeah.
So I'm barely gonna get on the mat starting July. I will get the okay from my doctors. I'd be like 6 months off the mat. Like I started reteaching like maybe 2-3 months ago. I started reteaching, but like there was good 3, almost 4 months where I was not allowed to be on the mat. And our instructor, since Philippe's actually really good, is like, Juan, get off the mat. Stop getting too close to the mat, Juan. Get out of here, Juan.
That's good. It's good to have support. People care about you, you know?
Well, Ajax, we care about you. You can call me and Anthony anytime you want, all right? I suggest calling Anthony at like 3 in the morning. Actually, he's up at that time.
Yeah, it sounds like I caught you by accident, because I only sent you a message on Instagram and you said you weren't checking Instagram messages, and you just so happened to be on Reddit and reply to a comment on the podcast episode. And I was like, hey, where have you been? And so that was a interesting I guess you were recovering from surgery and you just had nothing to do but go on to judo subreddit.
Yeah, well, it was a total like classic Reddit rabbit hole. I was on there researching Reddit spine surgery and getting all of the reviews from people who had disc replacements. And then I posted my own thing about disc replacement. So yeah, I was like, I totally hadn't been on Reddit for actually about the same amount of time as Instagram. And yeah, totally did catch me. Just, I was like, oh, well, now that I'm on Reddit checking spine surgery, let's see what's going on with the judo community. I see it's grown a ton in the Reddit community. Yeah, I mean, it's grown insane since the last time I was really poking around on there. And then it seems like a lot of interest in judo from like beginners that ask a lot of the same question. Am I too old to start judo? Is it, what's a good club? Hey, is this club toxic? I can't tell. Yeah. Like it's,
there's a lot of BJJ people too that are interested in judo. That's a huge thing. And which is why I kind of see that being reflected too in the local club scene here, at least in SoCal. And also, I'm sure when you went to Chris Round's place in High Noon, you like Texas scene has grown, like the Northern Virginia scene has grown. So I think Southern California, Seattle, Boston, Florida, they're no longer just like the big judo country cities.
Countries,
there's
yes.
Countries, yeah. There's all these other little places popping up with popularity, and it's we hate to admit it, but it's fueled by the BJJ cross training community.
Yeah.
Now they all want to learn how to throw. That's how it is. They want to all learn how to do Uchimata. Same thing. Every question they come, every time they come in, it's always like, so when can I learn Uchimata? It's your first day, bro. Come on.
Like, see if you can take the fall for Uchimata, and then we'll talk about teaching you Uchimata.
Yeah.
So last time when we interviewed you, it's a while ago, as we said, we left off with we just talked about your plans of like growing the club. You said there's a lot of people come and sign up. You want to get a bigger space and all that kind of stuff. So let's pick it up from there. Like, what has happened since that point after the interview? Like, did things continue to go up for a while before things started like going bad, or was it right after an interview we were like jinxing everything and it's like everything went
no, it's not like that. So like so the whole thing started even like during the last interview and before that, like the whole thing started with just not ideal, right? Like in an ideal world, I'd be a millionaire and I could buy my own commercial building and you know, build it up and be just awesome from day one. But you know, the real world is I'm spending a lot of debt off working other jobs, and it's kind of like, hey, you know, modest beginnings, that's all good, humble beginnings. So yeah, we'll just rent the mat space when some BJJ guys aren't using it in their club. We did end up getting into a bigger building. Long story short, essentially I had this crazy huge idea in my head. I said, if I ever move back to Pocatello, I'm going to buy this specific building in Old Town, right? It's like 6 layers. It was a furniture department store back in the 1920s, with just like 3,000 or no, yeah, I don't know. It's like 3,000 or 4,000 square feet of open floor plan. You know, you don't have any of the beams, posts, like none of that garbage that a lot of buildings have. You don't have to pad them. And you know, it's like 5-6 stories high. It's got a 1-level or a 1-bedroom apartment at the 6th level, you know? So it's kind of like, oh man, like you can live there and have your mortgage covered in your business. And you can have a floor for wrestling, for judo, for BJJ, weights in the basement, like huge parking out back, all that kind of stuff. So I told myself, if I ever move back to Pocatello, I'm going to buy that building. It was up for sale for like $300,000 for like 10 years, right? So of course, the second I moved back, I call a realtor because it was before I was in real estate and said, hey, like looking at that building for me. I know it's off market. It's been sitting there for like 10 years. Like, what do we got to do, you know? And I told the BJJ person I was working with, like, hey, I got this idea. And, you know, we sat down for lunch and I said, hey, you know, I'm not going to like make you sign an NDA or anything stupid like that. Like, I trust you. We're 10-year friends. No. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I was like, you know, like we don't need any of that. Like, that's fine. But if I owned the building like this, would you consider renting from me? And the dude, you know, the dude's a landlord. He has like a dozen single family home rentals, you know, and he owns his own jiu-jitsu school and he owns the building, right? He's not just renting, he owns that building. So I'm like, I know ownership's kind of a big deal for you. And then it makes sense. I'm obviously trying to do the same thing. What do you think? He says, yeah, if you owned a building like that, I'd rent from you. I'm like, cool, man, killer. And already he's working with a wrestler too that needed a space that was kind of working out of one of the local high schools, but it wasn't working well. So he's like, man, we got the wrestling team. Like, they'd love that space. Like, we'd all love it. I'm like, sweet, let's do it. Well, the building, the realtor gets back to me and says, yeah, some out-of-state investors bought that and they're renovating it. They bought it like 3 months ago. I'm like, of course, but okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Back to square one. So BJJ guy says, hey man, why don't you just rent our space while we're not using it, get your club established, and then, and then we can just figure it out from there. I says, cool. Shows up to me one night, like right as practice starts, right? This is what like hurts. I was like, hey, let's sit down and have a business meeting and let's talk it over. He just catches me off guard while I'm trying to find a gi for a brand new kid. It's like my fourth practice, it's kind of squirrely. And he says, hey, so what do you think if I owned a building like that, would you rent from us? Because I was crunching the numbers and like, dude, we could do this. Like, we can do this. He was super excited. And I told him, I said, like at this point, I have nowhere else to go. And if I didn't rent from you, then I would have to shut the club down, which I'm not currently willing to do. So I said, long story short, and I made it long anyways.
No, this is interesng.
So I was going through all.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I'm kind of going through all that when we last talked. So he gets into the new building. I bring up some concerns. He's like, no, it's fine. It's cool. It's nothing like that. And I'm kind of like, okay, I just have to take another loss. That's fine. I'm kind of used to that after my judo career. So yeah, I'll eat that loss and move on with life. It's fine. We get in the new building. And there's just a ton of little things that started and just kept piling up, right? And after a while, you're kind of like, yeah, there's no one big thing, but just the whole thing as a whole. It's just there's so many little things. I mean, dude, we had, I'm teaching kids classes. Pigeon comes in through the broken roof. Kids are like, oh, there's a bird. They're trying to chase a bird. I'm like, hey, no, you get over here and stay on the mats, and don't touch that bird. And he's got to try and shoo it out the door. And then there's, pardon the language, there's pigeon shit on the floors and on my mats. I got to clean it up, dude. I'm like, literally, this is brutal. And then I said, hey,
he was using that space too, though. It's not just you.
Correct. We had a judo mat, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu mat, and wrestling in the corner.
Yeah.
They paid a local contractor to frame up some like 3 squat racks. So there's a little weight area over here. And then there's like formal offices over here on the main front. So he's renting out to a physical therapist, massage therapist. And this was all like just word for word. Like I told him, I was like, man, we'll have weights in there. You could do massage therapy. You could do physical therapy, nutritionist, right? And like everything I first told him, like he's doing. And then on the side of that, we sponsored some refugees from Ukraine. When the war broke out, when the invasion happened. And we were looking for a rental for them. And I said, hey man, you got rentals, right? Like what, do you have any availability by chance? And he says, yeah, we got it. And then the more questions asked about the rental, there were like direct lies that came out. And again, they're small, but you think, man, if you're lying to me about that, why wouldn't you then be lying to me about the big multi-million-dollar facility that we're talking about? You know what I mean? Like you're talking about $850 a month rental, and you lied about the carpet being shampooed when in fact it wasn't even vacuumed. There were like, I went in, there was dog kibble in the carpet,
There's a reason why people hate landlords, right? So
yeah, totally. Yeah. And like throughout the course of that, like 6 or 7 different times, just talking about rent. And of course I'm in real estate at this point. So he's picking my brain and we're talking about real estate and we're talking about all this stuff. And he would just like I never once brought this up. I never accused him. I never used the phrase. He kept being like, dude, I'm not a slumlord, like it's like this, And I'm like, man, you're real self-conscious about being a slumlord. Yeah. I'm like, he's projecting his insecurities. Yeah. He keeps saying it. And I said, hey, I said, it's totally fine either way. But like, is that, these Ukrainians are coming there like wartime refugees. Like I want to make it as nice as I can. Obviously it's an entry level rental and that's fine. But like, I'm going to make it as nice as I can. I said, hey, has that like carpet been vacuumed? Has it been shampooed or what? And he goes, yeah. No, I'm pretty sure there's steam cleaner marks on the floor from that. So of course I get the key, I go over there and there's not vacuum lines or steam cleaner lines. And then, so I'm like, okay, I obviously got a vacuum. So I start vacuuming it. And I mean, seriously, I was finding like dog kibble, like paper clips, like big stuff where it's like, that hasn't even been vacuumed, let alone steam cleaned, like it's just a blatant lie, and there's like black mold on the sink and stuff. And on the counter, I'm scrubbing black mold off. And it's like, I got to move these guys in here and I got to make it as nice as I can. And so then like, when you're trying to run a club and trying to run real estate, and then you're personally doing property management to clean black mold off of sinks,
and you're not working for this guy.
No, I paid him the money. I paid deposit out of my pocket.
Yeah.
Hoping so it's like, if you're going to lie to me about that, then obviously everything that I've asked you about the judo club and the building feels like a lie. whether it is or isn't.
Then he also stole your idea and made you pay him for it.
Right. Which is again, and I approached him about that too. I said, hey man, I'm feeling like this is what happened. I even said, like, I don't think you'd ever do that. And I don't think that would happen. And I gave you the idea and now it's happening. And he goes, no, it's not like that. And we talked about it. And I said, I really could use some light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going through a lot of stuff. Is there any possibility, like you just want me to pay you rent? Cause he told me, he told me too, like, the thing is he was giving me a really good deal. It was like $300 a month for, like a 40 by 50 mat space and this building and stuff. And so it's like, man, commercial real estate, I could never do that. So there's a point where it's like, yeah, there's some altruism, there's some help there's some support, but he's like, I want your business to be so good and so big that you could pay yourself whatever you want to make first, and afford to pay me $2,000 to $3,000 a month for this. So
and I think he saw it as an investment, and he knew judo didn't have money at first.
Yeah, but I think he was like, oh man, if he does build it up, if Ajax takes off, big name in a small community, if that really takes off, I can get some of that too. And but yeah, so I just said, hey man, I there's never going to be a time where I'm going to pay you $3,000 a month. No offense, but either if I can afford a $3,000 a month building, I'm going to be in my own space, doing it up awesome my way, or then I need to own this building too. So is there any partnership? Is there any way we could team up on this, man? You could say after 10 years of paying rent on time, sign me onto the deed or title. You know what I mean? Just anything. It doesn't even have to be perfect. You don't have to sign me on the title right now, but show me some light. And he says, no, I'll talk to my wife about that. I think that'd be a good thing. And then of course, she never brought it up again. And then just tons of other small things. Every time I'd ask about hey, can I put some seating here for the parents? Well, if you do that, I got to let the wrestlers do that. And we can't have all that. So the parents just got to stay in the waiting room, which was totally separate from the mat space.
That could be a good thing though.
It could be, and it's framed as a good thing until suddenly, a kid hurts her back and is crying on the side of the mat for 45 minutes, and the parents don't know any better. And then the parents won't come. The mom was taking judo from me. She's had her kid in jujitsu. Yeah. Now she won't come to judo or jujitsu or do any of it. And she's got a big chip on her shoulder about how things are run. And I said, dude, and he tried to frame me. He says, the good thing with that is, then the parents can't hear when you're yelling at their kids. And I said, well, I have nothing I was like, that's actually not it saves me the pain in the ass of parents being nitpicky. But I'm like, I told him, I said, I stand behind stuff. I don't tell kids anything I wouldn't say in front of their parents. And he goes, no, but I'm just saying, we're going to have cameras in here and the parents can log in and watch the cameras like a doggy daycare. And I was like, okay. And he's like, the good thing is you can make nice body language. You're motivating the kids. You can say whatever you want. I was like, that's not that's again, really I'm like, these are more red flags, man. You're not.
That's a huge red flag.
Right there. I was like, dude, that's the opposite. I actually want my.
That's
parents,
a red building, man. That's that's firing squads.
Yeah, that's the road ends and you're hitting the cement barrier. You know what I mean? So but every little thing like that was popping up, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. And you get to the point where you got a chip on your shoulder, so there's you go to the bathroom, there's no toilet paper. Yeah, and you're like, dude, come on, run your building. Run. It's not a big ask. Put toilet paper, replace it. So then you do it. I do it personally. And then the next time there's no toilet paper, I'm like, dude, I'm sick of doing the homework for this guy. This is killing me. You got to run your stuff. So I'm not going to do it. And then it's 2 weeks goes by and there's just, every time you want to go to the bathroom, you check first, there's no toilet paper. All right, I got to walk across the building to the other bathroom and see if there's toilet paper there, or I got to start packing it in my judo bag and just use it myself. And then you're like, dude, now I'm playing a nitpicky petty game. And the whole thing it's just negative, man. It's just super toxic. And so then you get over it and you just go, you know what, man, my neck is killing me. I'm seeing a doctor. They're telling me I got to have surgery. My business did grow in that building. And there was never a single month where the judo club was not profitable. I was in the green every month. I did the budget. I was buying crash pads too. I was buying the little footwork ladders. I bought a little tripod camera to do stuff. And so I've got expenses plus the rent, and I'm still making money, but it's I'm making $1,000, $1,200, $1,300 a month. Mortgage alone is $1,950, let alone cars, insurance, gas, groceries, health insurance, whatever, right? It's I can't make a living off that. There's just no way. And there was no room for growth of the mat area. There was no room for my parents to sit. The actual legality is there's only about 6 parking spaces for a building that's supposed to host 3 huge teams plus therapists and massage therapists. You know what I mean? So it's just, you got people running across Yellowstone Highway trying to get to class, and everybody's, what are we going to do about parking? And you're like, lady, I'm sorry, this is not my building. This is not my preference. And I struggled to park as much as you did, like I don't, I don't have the solution for you. Unfortunately, we're all just kind of gritting our teeth and doing this. And if it's not worth it to you to show up, then I guess don't, or you got to deal with it like the rest of us, which is not a fun conversation to have with your parents,
Yeah.
That's a polite way of saying like, hey, whatever, figure it out or don't get out of my face. I got to teach these kids. And so it's crazy stuff like that.
Yeah. It's always a weird thing to me. Like when I see any martial arts, the Taekwondo, karate, BJJ, or just Muay Thai place or something that's like almost like on a main boulevard where, there's no parking, it's like a little bit of parking in the rear or something, but it's all just street parking up and down the road. It's like, how does this place survive with like no parking spots for this? Like, how do you have a class of like 10 people, 15, 20 people? Where do they park at?
Yeah.
I always get weird when I see places like that.
Yeah. And it was nuts. So the wrestling program's huge. I mean, they probably have like 80 or 90 kids total. So you got the little kids, 30 or 40, and then you got 15 to 30 of the next kids. And then, the real high school kids. And then you've got the jiu-jitsu at the same time, and they're going through and then judo at the same time. And it just was super unfeasible. And that was my first question. He said, that building over here, that's the one we're going to buy. And I said, is there parking there? And he goes, yeah, there's parking spaces there. He buys it. We get over there. There's 6 parking spaces. And it's one of those like, oh yeah, technically you were right. Like there is, but like the reason I asked that question is I put all this thought into it for 10 years traveling around. I mean, I used to get super frustrated at Pedro's judo because they do have a parking lot. It's reasonable, but not for the amount of kids and then adult judo people. And then Travis Stevens runs his BJJ out of there, and the pace was just packed. Mm-hmm. Parking lot was packed by the like next to the cement factory and stuff. And there's like, and they easily doubled the parking spaces we had here, And I'm like, so it was one of those pet peeves of mine. I was kind of spoiled at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado, right? Because they have this massive parking lot. You can just park wherever. There's never a shortage of space there. So then when I moved out to Pedro's, I was like, man, this is kind of annoying. And all these little things kind of built. So I asked him, I said, hey, like, just not criticizing your business. I'm not, but like, what are you gonna do for parking? Those are 3 huge teams,
Mm-hmm.
and teams all hoping to grow, not just already big, but hoping to grow, He goes, there's parking spaces over there. And I'm like, oh, that was one of those technicality things where I'm like, if that's the logic we're tracking, then again, it's the same as the rental thing. And it's like, it's always going to be like, no, I'm fine. You guys figure it out. And it's like, man, I can't grow like this. I can't do anything. And
so I'm assuming that place is still around.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, probably bigger and better than ever. I mean, they even doubled their mat space, and the rest they were growing the wrestling mat space. So
what happened to the parking problem then? What do you think?
There's nothing. I mean, their own constituents like make jokes about it on Facebook.
So people,
like a Denny's building.
If you want it bad enough, then you would just
you'll be here. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And there was a point where there was kind of like a quadplex townhome on the other side of the block, and it had a huge parking lot, but it was all gated off. It was all like chain link gated.
Yeah.
And when we first got in there, he just opened it and they were just parking there. So it's like, oh, well, there's parking. But so then, of course, me being in real estate and me seeing like, my dream project get taken over by somebody else, I'm kind of like, I start asking more questions because I'm not seeing this going very well. Writing on the wall, right?
Yeah.
So I said, hey, is that your parking lot? Like, that's awesome, And he's like, no, that's this other guy's. He's a longtime investor in Pokey. He owns like 50 lots around town. So we reach out to him. We're going to try and buy it from him. And so I'm like, oh, there's a part of the real world where, you can buy your way out of a lot of problems.
Yeah.
There's also a part where, sometimes egos just clash and people just don't get along and you just can't solve everything with money. Foresight would have been the solution here. Probably about 6 or 8 weeks after we were there. And he was just like, yeah, we just started using it. He just opened the gate and everybody was using it that could. And I said, hey, so are you going to buy that lot? And he goes, no. And they started kicking us off. And I said, what? And he's like, but it's a real it's a real beg forgiveness versus ask permission situation. I said, okay,
that's such a shitty thing to do though.
Yeah. I was like, okay, whatever, dude. But literally it lasted 2 months. And then that investor broke ground and developed it. And it was all under construction after that. So it's like, oh yeah, your 15 spaces are now gone that weren't yours anyways. And now there's literally brand new housing there. It's like, no, the guy literally was developing it. So even like he's like, yeah, there's a solution though. We'll just do that. We'll just use that lot because it's just empty. It's just been sitting there for years. And then I'm like, yeah, well, now people see movement and they're going to move on their projects. And so literally, there's no actual solution. They just park on the street. People drop their kid off. They just park, like double park, and the kid runs in and they just pull around the block and park wherever. A lot of parents, you come out, the 6 spaces are like in front of the bay doors. They're past the sidewalk. They're off the street. But I'd come out at like 8:30 at night and I couldn't back out because people would just be parking on the curb. And I'm like, dude, I can't even back out. I got to walk in, go up to the wrestling coach, like, hey, anybody, black sedan, Toyota Corolla, like, get it out of my way. I got to go home, man. I got to go to my next real estate showing. I'm freaking, and so, like, I don't know. A Denny's came up for sale recently and it was posted on Facebook in our town. It's got a big parking lot for, traditional classic commercial space that was developed properly for tons of constituents, and then, like I said, his own people are on there, like tagging him like, hey, maybe we could buy this place and actually have a parking lot, and there's just no actual
leave
solution.
the kitchen inside there and stuff. You can put the mats around the kitchen, why not?
That's fine. Yeah. So that's kind of the situation.
You can use those Ukrainian refugees and make them cook for them. Like,
yeah, right. Yeah. I wish. No, yeah, it's interesting.
Piece of work.
So yeah, it just kind of was like that. And like, it was one of those real, like, super nice to my face, super diplomatic. Anything we could talk, you could have a real reasonable conversation. Well, let me talk to my wife about that. And yeah, maybe we could do some shared ownership and do a partnership long-term. I'd be into that. But then like everything behind the scenes never panned out well, and, it was just, I mean, dude, I had like kids as grandparents would show up to watch their 6-year-old grandkid like do judo, which is great. Like, what do we need in this world? Family involvement, support, like what a good wholesome thing. And they would come over and be like, hey, you guys can't sit here. This is the weight room. People pay to use this area, but like nobody would be using it, right? And he'd be like, so you guys can't sit here. And I'm like, dude, you're kicking out these like literally 70-year-old people trying to watch their 6-year-old grandson do judo and this new thing he's doing. He comes home telling them like, yeah, I'm doing judo. And they're like, oh, cool. What is that? And the parents like, yeah, come watch it. And then you're walking over here during the practice you're supposed to be teaching. You walk over here and police my people. And then you ask me to police them. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm sorry. Like I'm just not going to do that.
So this guy, the owner, just to confirm, is he a BJJ instructor?
Yeah, he runs his own BJJ club.
Okay.
He's a Pedro Sauer black belt. He took over the club that was here in town when I was in college. And it's just grown and grown. And he's again, very diplomatic up front, very good salesmanship. He's a financial advisor, he's a real estate investor. And he's been consistently doing, and he does the super fights and stuff like that. And he's, they got the sword and all the medals hanging on the wall. And so, so he runs that BJJ club next to me as well as owns the building.
The reason I asked is because your story basically echoes a lot of stuff I read about or see happen to other jujitsu. Is it just like a jujitsu thing, like that? All this like backstabbing and I don't know this. I don't know what to call it. It just seems
you're gonna get us in trouble.
Common.
The more the longer I go, the more that seems to be the consistent pattern. It does. Like, I don't want to like crap on them. It's not going to be every single case, but the longer I see the two work together, the more I see the undercutting, backstabbing stuff from one side or the other. And given the economic power of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu right now, judo tends to be at their mercy, and then that tends to go poorly.
And I also think, how do I word this without sounding wrong? I think like in the macro level and also the micro level, they got to that, like this guy got to where he is by screwing people over clearly and being a slumlord. Let's just, lack of a better word, let's just call a spade a spade. But also I feel like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu got to where it is because of this kind of business practice. Like it contributes to it.
If you do a pretty deep dive into some of the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and some of the real, like there's one common name we all know, right? Yeah, and if you look at some of the little cross stories of them and how they did their super fights, like, I mean, just like the old fables of what it was like when they were first coming around and getting big is like, dude, people that went against the club they grew up in literally ended up being jumped with broken legs, you know? And it was like, oh, it was just like they just got mugged on the street in Rio. And it's like, they never had that problem for 15 years. And then suddenly, like a week after they trained at another club across town, they ended up with 2 broken legs and can't do jujitsu. Like there's kind of a lot of like mafioso type stuff. And
well, there's
like,
also
so this same guy, like literally told me, you know, he's like, oh yeah, like that guy, big, huge jujitsu name in New York is like, oh yeah, like he seems like a shark. He seems like he'll take anything he wants from you no matter what. And I was like, oh, I've never actually met him, but I don't know. But, you know, our judo guy used to teach St. Ledger. Gary used to teach judo out of his jiu-jitsu club. Gary opened his own club, and there was a big hubbub about like, oh man, he's going against us. Like, how could he open a club across town and all this and that? And you know, I talked with Gary about it once, and he's like, you know, that famine mentality is rough, man. And like, I thought we were friends. I thought he supported me. I thought we supported each other. And turns out that as soon as I was in a place to do this, suddenly it wasn't a two-way street, you know.
And I mean,
he's
teaching just judo out there. He's not teaching jujitsu.
100%.
Right.
And he's, you know, and it's like, oh, a club in New Jersey, and he's in like, you know, Gary's like in Manhattan. It's like, dude, you're not actually even geographically close. You're in a city of 8 million people plus, you know, like there's no famine here. If Gary has 100 students, that's not 100 out of your pocket. Those are people that are there to do judo.
It's really freaking weird.
And so, like I said, just the longer it goes on, the more people I talk to, that pattern persists. And I will say, like, growing up with my own dad, that if the tables were turned economically, I have no doubts that they would be telling the same stories. Honestly, I hate to say that, but the judo people aren't actually any better. And what I think
it
comes
so?
to is egos. I do. I actually genuinely believe that. Yep. Okay, especially just seeing like the drama within the coaches of USA Judo and the upper echelons, right?
I was going to say judo has its own problems, but I don't think they'd be these kind of problems. It would be more like I've heard stories. I'm not going to repeat here about some clubs in Texas and Virginia and like what was the other one I'm thinking of? But it's all like behind the scenes, and also they won't like post on Facebook that this guy's a backstabber or whatever. And and it's usually over taking people's students, and that's if you open like within a 10-mile radius or something. But what you said about like taking your business plan and all that kind of stuff wouldn't happen, I think. And I can't see that happening in judo scene.
Maybe I don't know. Juan, what do you think? Were you going to say something?
Well, I've been thinking about this, and it's something that I've been saying for a long time. And a lot of people get mad when I say this because they BJJ that I've noticed, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ, doesn't matter which system or something, they run their businesses, like companies almost. You know, they use the whole mentality of like how your company be like, oh, hey, we're a family, we need you to come on the weekends. BJJ does that same thing. Hey, we're a family. Like one of our students told us that the academy that he trains at, they don't get to keep their medals. If you medal in any BJJ tournament,
hang it on the wall.
They keep your medal, they post it, they hang it on the wall.
Yeah, it was the most crazy thing I heard.
Yeah. He asked us, like, when he won at one of our tournaments, he's like, oh, since they won, do I give you this medal now or later? I was like, what do you mean now or later? I'll take a photo of you with it. I'll promote you that way, but I'm not taking your medal. This is yours, man. If you want to donate to dojo, great. But no, but it's just one of the things I've noticed about BJJ is that they run their businesses so much like business, like a company. It is black and white to them. It is them getting ahead. Them making profit margins.
I wouldn't even call it a business, because if it's a business, you would keep the medal, right? Yeah. And then you wouldn't make people work for free, let's just say. So I feel like they're trying to
pay you to work.
Yeah,
that's what the situation is.
It's like the new it's new version. Well, I keep on calling it like it's a new version. How like Taekwondo messed up karate in the 80s and 90s. You know, they brought up McDojos, made it easier for people to take it, more expensive, make people have that, make them feel like they have something. It's kind of like what BJJ's done with that. Like a lot of BJJ competitors, not all of them. I'm gonna get some heat right now, but a lot of them are just little weekend side people do for fun because it makes them feel strong. You know, I can land the ground, I can do this. I'm not being thrown, I'm not being punched. You know, I'm gonna be okay. So that's the way they run their business. Like it's very like it's just so much business work. Like we have BJJ friends. I have BJJ friends and stuff, and I have some that tell me that the way that they teach their kids, I wouldn't teach my kids that way. But for them, they'll have like 50 kids in their class, and it's okay. But me and Anthony are struggling. Well, mostly Anthony, I help him out and stuff. Struggling to build our kids program. we'll get 10 or 15. We're like, oh my God, we're doing amazing. And then half of them will drop out. What do we do? What do we do to get more kids?
The parents want me to abuse their kids. I don't know why. It's a really weird thing. And if I refuse to do it, they just take them to somewhere where they'll abuse their kids.
It was funny. There's a Korean judo club here in K-Town near us. Not too far away. It's like
I don't know if you're about to say something I need to cut out.
No. But it's funny because one of their guys that came to our dojo for a long time ago said, "Oh yeah, my parents like me to go to this dojo more because they yell at me in Korean." And I was like, "I got Tim." Tim's one of our Korean members. Like, I got Tim. I'll have Tim yell at you in Korean if you want. Okay. I'll yell at you in Spanish, Japanese, and English if you want. Okay.
No, the reason I say that is because some of the other things that high profile. I'm not going to name names, but people who know what I'm talking about. Like, there's a really popular Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brand out there, sponsors tons of athletes. The guy who owns it has been to prison for something, and also he was pretty much known to have stolen the patterns for his gis from someone else and started his business that way, because he came out of prison and this guy offered him a job. And while he was working for him, like he stole the patterns from him and started his own gi company. Yeah, like that kind of stuff, I can't see imagining happen in, like, imagine Travis Stevens stole Jimmy Pedro's pattern and started like a Mount Everest gi company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that just goes back to the thing where BJJ seems very business oriented, where judo, we're still very, and we talked about this last time on our podcast, we're still like very small mom and pop family oriented. I think we still got that Bushido mentality of like, we want to help people. If we make money, great. Like, but most of us aren't in it to make money. We should be. We're trying to change this mentality, but that's when the BJJ got us. Like, whether you pay or not, whether you come or not, we don't care.
I'm not trying to make it sound like judo is better than BJJ, but I know, but I really think like there's still backstabbing happening, and also the dojo, what do you call it? Opening a gym across the street, whatever, that kind of protectionism and gatekeeping, that still happens in all martial arts clubs, not just judo and BJJ. So that's the thing. But I feel like at least there's like a moral floor that judo has, where they're like, hey, maybe I shouldn't steal this guy's idea if he was nice enough to share it with me, kind of thing, like that kind of stuff, or steal this guy's patterns, or I feel like that's a line. There's a line in judo where people don't cross in terms of stuff like that.
I'd like to throw a 2 cents in on some of that. Like, I personally believe a lot of that is a few things. Like, one, it's subjective, so it kind of depends on the judo club you're in and the judo people you're connected with. And then, like, anyone will do this, right? Whether it's taekwondo, BJJ, judo, wrestling, like they all have a certain set of values and morals that they preach at practice. That's work ethic and discipline and focus and respect. And some of them are heavier on respect than others, but respect can often be like held over someone's head. Like, if you respect me, you're going to do it my way. And then suddenly, if you do something not my way, now you've disrespected me. And now I have a reason to go against you or be mad at you. And so that gets like overlaid a lot. And so, like, if you're always playing within the rules of your community, then you never feel that or see that, right? Because you've always respected the system that was there. And I think there's a big part of it's confirmation bias, like, because judo is the smaller right now. One, we hear about less drama. There's less Instagram. It's less popular. There's less people talking about it. Two, you have people like me that they're like, I'm going to disengage. I'm just going to move. I'm going to go to the Shadowland. I'm going to move out to Idaho and just, I'm not going to be involved in this, man. I can't do it anymore. Versus, like, if you have, right, like, whatever, it's just a law of large numbers. If you have 100 people and 20 of them get pissed that way, at least 10 of them are going to move forward with a chip on their shoulder and make moves specifically against the other, whoever pissed them off, right? Whereas, like, if you only have 10 people and 2 of them are feeling burned and down and out, it's more likely that the 2 of them are just going to be like, whatever, eat my losses and move on. I'll just be done with that, right? So just the larger the numbers, the more you're going to see that stuff. But I can definitely personally tell you 110% it does happen in judo, like, very specifically, all of it happens. And And that's in the United States and that's worldwide from just what I've personally seen. And so then I think there's just a little bit of like, we're seeing it more in BJJ culture right now, but it's because they're so huge. It's easy to see. There's so many cases that you can find that. And then in the judo community, and like you said, I don't remember which one of you mentioned it earlier, that like, oh, it's kind of hush hush in judo. Like even if it does happen, like people don't blast it as much on Facebook and stuff. And so there's a big part. But like recently, right, Coach Justin Flores had a big Instagram post calling out one of the other coaches.
Yeah, but
he knows where the
well, we all don't know.
He's frustrated. Yeah. It's a big mystery, right? And that is part of the drama, and it is at that level. And that is our leadership fighting, and that is happening, and it is happening in the open. It's just like, oh, there was like that one case of it versus, man, I've heard about 8 BJJ stories in my California community alone, right? It's like the numbers are just skewed, but it definitely happens. And I mean, Ed Liddy's been at his position for 30 years. You know what I mean? Like, how did that happen? Nobody ever, he could.
Yeah, but that's all. All like organization. It has nothing. It's not what I said about the business stuff, right? It's very.
But it's the same concepts, though. It's the same. Like they're doing the same concepts, but just in a like. Okay. Yeah, he's not stealing a trademarked business gi pattern.
So the way I see it. The way I see it is everyone that's fighting there, they think that what they're doing is good for the sport or for their, you don't think so? They
I believe they're doing it for themselves.
Well, yeah, but
they're doing it for their own money. It's their own
clearly. Yeah. But they also think it's good for the sport. You don't think?
No, they say that and they justify their actions.
You don't think they believe it? You don't think they believe it though?
I believe some do believe that, and I know others don't though. Like I know that they know they're not doing justice, and they rewire the logic to meet their own narrative to sleep better at night. That still counts. They don't actually.
If they rewire the logic.
But there's a point where they admit it and they say like, yeah, I know it's not like ideal. So then this is what we have to do instead. So it's like, but like they know that it's not what's best or what's ideal.
Yeah.
And because of that, then they're going to say, well, so now I'll do this crappy thing, but it's not my fault because it's the circumstances. Say, well, why don't you just do the good thing anyways? Why don't you just do what you're supposed to do, what you believed in originally, instead of rewriting your logic? So there's a point like where at least deeply subconscious, they do know that it's not what's best, but it's the only way that they can get their needs met. And so they have to rewrite the script to where I can get my needs met and I still feel like I'm helping, even though they know it's not.
That's what I'm saying. You're already saying is what I'm saying. It's just I still think they're fighting over like the direction of judo or like where the money should be put and stuff. It's still judo related, but has nothing to do with like the gi stuff I mentioned or like being a slumlord, that kind of stuff. So it has not. So you're not really gonna see that. But I agree with what you said because I think the other thing I want to add on to what you said before about BJJ being more popular is being a huge cause to make it more open for everyone to see is the affiliation system too, right? We don't really have that in judo. So everything that happens in judo is very self-contained within these small judo communities within like Southern California or whatever. Go ahead, Juan.
Oh, so I was going to ask, so you've had all these little things happen to you. You're getting frustrated. What was the straw that broke the Ajax back that decided, you want to know what? I can't do this no more. I'm going to close the shop.
Unintended, huh?
You got it.
It was my neck, Juan. It was my neck. Get the facts.
I broke the Ajax neck. That made you decide, you want to know what? I'm just going to walk away from this. It's not working out. I'm not going to like waste any more time in this. I'm just going to walk away and end this and move on to your new realtor career where you're throwing good deals to everybody.
Yeah. There wasn't actually like, I don't know. It's, I guess in layman's terms or something, I would just say it was just total burnout. I mean, like I said, I stopped doing the startup company for free, because it had been 3 years of them being like, we're going to pay you in the next 3 to 6 months. We're going to have and then kept kind of hanging on and being like, man, even at this point, even if they do get the budget to start paying employees, like I'm just totally over it. I can't keep committing time. The big conflict of interest was that judo was hurting my real estate and real estate was hurting my judo. I had 2 careers competing against each other, and one is just an economic powerhouse that's a clear winner. And so it's kind of like, the passion project just has to die because I cannot survive on it, and I can't actually even survive with it. as a side hustle or a secondary thing. And then on top of that, I needed back surgery and neck surgery, and then all the building woes. And it was just everything. I was just like, man, I'm working 70 to 8-hour weeks. None of it feels good. The rewards aren't there because, again, when you have conflicting businesses, it's like they all do okay. None of them was actually like, real estate wasn't doing so well that then I could just go do judo and not care at all and lose money. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, man, why am I still in debt this late? Why do I work this hard to like not have financial security or freedom? You know, I'm one mild, and we didn't have like, we were paying health insurance out of pocket until February, and it was like really, like, it's really expensive for like pretty poor coverage. And it's like, man, like I'm literally one really minimal issue away from total devastation. Why, like, if I'm going to be that close to the line, I may as well not work so hard and just relax and enjoy life. Or I may as well figure out the quality over quantity and actually make it to where I'm feel comfortable and enjoy it. And I have free time, you know, like, and that's the thing is there was no like one straw that it just, the whole thing in total, I was just done with it all. You know, I was ready to crawl in a hole and just be done. And that's why I like got off, like I said, got off Instagram, got off Reddit. I was just completely over everything. Didn't want to try and build the business up. Didn't want to work. Didn't want to do anything, man. Like start going to therapy because it was the only thing that, you know, keeps you from hanging in the closet and stuff. And not to be too dark, but you know, it's like, yeah, I just can't do it anymore. And I don't want to. And honestly, unfortunately, I hate to say this out loud, but since I shut the judo club down, I haven't felt an ounce of regret. I've been completely relieved. I mean, not like of everything in my life. Like I still have other problems I'm dealing with and still going through neck surgery, but like I've been completely relieved to have that off my plate and to take that time back, whether it goes to real estate or if real estate's not busy, then I just take my time back and I lift weights and I just enjoy it, you know? Which like it sucks. Like like I would like to say I missed judo or something. And I do miss like, you know, I mean, I had some really funny, goofy kids that liked judo and we had a good time training and whatever. But I mean, my dad hosted our tournament in November here in town at the university. Dude, it's a 1.3 miles away from the club I'm actually physically at. And the whole town in total is a 13-mile span. It's nothing. I had 2 kids show up to that tournament. People just didn't want to do judo. They just didn't really care. They were like, nah, this is just kind of like babysitting for Tuesdays and Thursday nights, you know, a couple times a week. Terrible. Like we don't, and then, you know, and then the super athletic kids start to leave and join baseball and swimming and
it's
just a whole battle. Yeah. And there's a part of it where it's like, I knew that coming into it. That's par for the course, but there's, like I said, there's a point where it's just like, man, going through all of this, you know, just to have people, you know, tell you to change the toilet paper at the end of the day. I'm like, fuck this, man. I'm over it. You know, I'm just, there's no reward other than like, these kids are laughing while I'm teaching them. And that's pretty cool. And their parents are like, hey man, it's made a big difference. And that's the best possible reward. But there's just a point where it's like, man, I'm driving myself mad here. And it's not worth it, man. I got to focus on myself for a bit.
That's why I believe that to grow judo, it's in young adults, just like early 20s. Like we need to grow that segment and not the kids. Like I don't know why everyone else is focused on kids, but
yeah,
it seems like it's the lowest hanging fruit because the kids are being forced there by their parents. They don't know what judo is when you grow up, right? And they're eventually going to find other interests, which is fine, is good for them. But we need to shift the culture of judo, and you start that with changing the adults, and then the adults will get the kids interested in judo when you have a cultural shift. So it's no longer cool to play baseball or whatever, and in the future maybe it's cool to do judo instead. So I that's my personal opinion, but
I would agree. And part of that is, and you see this in BJJ a lot, is that an adult doing it, or even one that did it 10 years ago, they're like, man, I want to put my kids into that. And then they come back and then they do it and the kid works out and then the kid stays and watches the, you know, mom or dad work out, and it's kind of a family thing, and they all go to competitions together and they're involved, and it's much more like cohesive and bonding, like just within a family structure and dynamic, versus like a parent who's like, why did you do that? And the kid's like, because that's what the sensei said. And the parents don't know judo, they don't understand, you know, instead of coming off the mat and being like, dude, you switch directions, killer Ogoshi. Like that was, like the parents are just like, oh, I mean, you won. That's cool. I don't even know why you won. I
It's
don't
really
even know this
funny.
sport. And
It's really funny watching some of the parents try to coach the kids on the side, and they like
Yeah.
absolutely know nothing. And I'm just
yeah.
yeah.
So imagine if like I said, in BJJ, you got like a purple belt, brown belt, and they're doing like, it's kind of the same thing. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do because you have to change club cultures, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of clubs are not entry level friendly.
Mhm.
And there is, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. There's a lot of toxicity in judo,
Yeah.
and even on Reddit, you see this, guys show up for 3 practices and was doing throwing with somebody who outweighed him by 100 pounds and blew his knee out. And it's like, man, it's because he barely knows how to fall. That's not, and that's the only club in the area. And it's like,
That's actually
Well,
one of the episodes. That's actually my plan for discussing what the topic was going to be if you didn't answer my text message about interviewing. Okay.
Well, I think we have a weird thing where we pride ourselves on being a very tough sport. Like I always say the joke, like only the strong survive judo, because even with us, before we revamped our entire program, our dojo, it was just one class. Like, yeah, we invited, like you could join and do a beginner's kind of 2-week crash course, but then after that, you're just with the rest of everybody else. And we didn't have a great retention rate, but since we changed our program up and stuff, we got beginner classes, intermediate, advanced. We've had a much better retention rate. But I think because judo we just have this weird mentality, like, okay, well, we may not be as popular as BJJ, but if you do judo, at least you're tough. You're strong. You're better than the average person that do this.
It's kind of like a catch-22, I think, because people who look for judo clubs are looking for instructors like you who have like competition pedigree and all that kind of stuff, but then they don't want to train like a competitor, right?
Yeah.
And then they expect it's like, well, I'm training under Jimmy Pedro, I should be like really better than all these. It's just like people think just finding the right instructor with a competition pedigree would get them good, but you also have to train like they did, which isn't something that everyone could do. So stepping back a little bit, I know a lot of people are trying, especially like kind of what you did, which is you started your own club within the BJJ club. And I know a lot of people are like, we need to like pair up with BJJ and we need to like learn from BJJ with the marketing and charging more and everything. Like, would you do that again if you could start over? And would you be afraid? Because this is what I'm afraid of, is picking up all these other bad parts of BJJ up and bringing it to judo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I guess the main thing is would I personally do it again? I would take probably just a different approach, right? A little more experience, cover my bases a little more. Probably try to define ahead of time your hard lines of yes and no. Like, I will accept this situation. I will not accept that. I will put up with this and shift it out and figure it out. Or like, no, that's just like, it's not going to work. So either you have to flex it out for me, or then we just got to walk away from each other. You know what I mean? You got to have an exit strategy. I think that's a really crucial part of it all, is just knowing where that line in the sand. I guess one of the other things I did want to kind of touch on when we're talking about judo and BJJ, and like, oh, we may not see that with judo, or we may not see that with BJJ. I think something that's shifted a lot in the BJJ culture as a whole is they are the big dogs right now, right? And with that naturally comes, like, some people then get into it it's just like politics, right? You get into it for status and fame and for success, and so the more competitive BJJ gets, the bigger the egos and the more sensitive certain characters are. You know what I mean? The more of that there is, the more insecurities there are. So you have people that, like, maybe they even won world championships, and then and then they're like, their whole life is like, I have to win. I'm a winner. I'm a go-getter. I don't lose. People don't tell me no. People don't talk down to me. And so then that trickles down into the community, into certain clubs. So then if you're going to go with a highly competitive club, you need to make sure those values do or don't match yours. And you have to be aware that, like, and that's why I say, like, I see that in judo too, because we have Olympic medalists and world champions and Olympic champions and Olympians that, feel down and out because they're they're at this status, but they don't get treated like that. They get treated like, oh, you didn't even win. You went out first round, you bum. And it's like, dude, how fucking hard it is just to get there. Like
People
pardon the language and all, but yeah. And it's like, you don't deserve to get crapped on for those kinds of things, really. But the other people that want their status to be respected more than ever at the very top of success are actively and passively and subtly and sneakily working to degrade everybody else and build themselves up. And so that's a big part of it. You got to look. So if I'm going to approach a BJJ club and say, hey, let me do some judo out of this, then I've got to, overthink it 100 times, wondering, who is this person? Are they highly success driven? Are their personal values based off of power and status and success? Or are their personal values based off of something else? And then just whatever it is, as long as there's an alignment, it's okay. Like if I'm also, but power, again, like you, as an example, you said Travis and Jimmy and Travis Steele and that, right? So their values are aligned and they work cohesively together. And that's okay. Now, sometimes your values are aligned and then you butt heads, right? Power versus power doesn't work, but power versus power towards the same goal, then that works. And so you kind of got to understand what club are you dealing with? And unfortunately, the hard thing is a lot of that stuff, any politician, any manipulative person, any narcissist, they put the mask on. They're fooling you. They're salespeople. 110% of the time, they're always they're writing a narrative. Even small comments, small comments like, I'm not a slumlord. I'll give you a good rate, and he did give me a good rate. Doesn't necessarily, there's other
attached.
there's other defining characteristics of slumlord, so to speak. And so, but that one little comment is they're laying a narrative, and so you got to kind of, the longer you get to know somebody, the more you're going to see if that's good or bad. And so that's the tough part, is you walk in day one and think we got good momentum and we're all on the same page. And then 6 months or 6 years in, things change and you're like, what the hell, man? I thought this person was great. And they just got a DUI and they're arrested and they're, going through a divorce and they're kicking me out of the club and they're doing this. And I can't believe, and you're like, man, that totally changed. It's like, so I don't know.
Are you still on speaking terms with this guy, or
as far as I know? Okay. Maybe not. I doubt they would ever listen to this. Yeah, I doubt they would ever listen to this. But if they do, or if anybody else does, then no, maybe it won't
not.
Be. Yeah. But
also but if for anyone in the area listening to this, it'd be obvious, right?
Yeah, 100%. There's no, everybody knows exactly the building I was in and who owns it and who, and like I said, I haven't spoken to them since, I did the classic little chicken shit, packed all my mats up on a Saturday night at midnight, and wrote them, what I was March, last day of the month, and wrote them and said, hey, I'm over, I'm out, see you, thanks for everything.
So you didn't give him any
welcome back anytime. No. Okay. And that was part of that whole there was no lease.
Yeah.
Or anything.
Yeah, there's no protection, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned how it was you were making money, but it wasn't good enough to get by.
To really justify it. Yeah.
Yeah, to really justify it. Were you charging as much as he was charging for wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all that kind of stuff?
I charged about the same as the wrestling club did, so again, that's a totally different program in the same building. So yeah, I charged about the same as the wrestling. But I was charging less than BJJ.
Okay.
And his thing, again, there was a lot of things that changed. So when I first was like, hey, let me pick your brain. How do I do a business model like this? And he says, I charge this. And I said, oh, great. And then later down the line, it would come out but I never up anybody's fees. So if you got to me when I was $50 a month, 10 years later, you're still $50 a month. And so that kind of shifts the numbers, because you say, I charge 100 a month. And then you go, man, he's got, all these 100, he's got 10 people, that's 1,000, and then you go, well, only 5 of them are 50, 2 of them are 75, 3 of them are 100. So it kind of flexes a lot. And then you'd say things like, oh, I totally buy business. I buy business. All you have to in this industry. And you go, what do you mean buy business? He goes, well, so-and-so says, hey, I want to put my kid in jiu-jitsu. And you say, well, it's $100 a month. And they say, well, I can't afford $100 a month. and our community as a whole is definitely not like very economically, high. And so there's a lot of cases where you're like, yeah, no, I mean, I can't just turn a kid away for that. We got to have a heart and soul. And so he says, but like if you take care of them for a cheaper rate, then they're going to tell their friends and family, and then their friends and family who can't afford, they're going to bring 2 or 3 kids in. So there's a lot of like flexibilities where suddenly all of his business model changed from what he first told me. And so, but yeah, I was just initially speaking, like he advertised like, yeah, it's this much a month. And then he was willing to negotiate. And so I was charging less than that for a few reasons. 2, one, I had less of a staff. He had 4 or 5 people helping out with his kids' class, and I had 1 to 3.
Was he paying them?
Not that I'm aware of. I think he was paying them with a free membership, right? Like they don't have to pay. And then there was times where I was like only doing twice a week, whereas they're doing 3 to 4 nights a week, kind of a thing. So I was like, well, I'm doing less sessions. That's less of a product, Again, as things change over time, it comes out that, well, these people are paying this much a month for the Tuesday, Thursday class, and the Monday, Friday class is different, and those are different. And so then I go, oh, see, that's kind of a huge subtle detail.
Yeah,
that he could have let me in on. Yeah. But again, he doesn't owe me to tell me his business model or anything. It's just an annoyance that I was like, man, I wish I would have known that or understood it better. But yeah, ultimately I was charging like $75 a month. When I very first started, it was Thursdays and Saturdays, and I was charging $50 a month. And I was only running 1 kids and 1 adults, Then I flexed it out to 3 days a week. I had a lot of people. They couldn't all make it. I was like, good, we're growing. So I did 3 days a week. I did little kids class, big kids class, and adults class. So my hours started coming up a lot more. But then I would have people be like, well, we just literally only want to come Thursday night. So how about we pay you $50 a month? And it's like, well, it's kind of, what am I going to say? Like, no, that's not fair.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. But, but it's like, well, if it's $100 a month or $75 a month, and you're literally only going to come to half the classes, you're literally only get half the product. So yeah, I'll charge you 2/3 instead of full price. But then again, like it sucks for me because I personally am going to be there for those hours anyways.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's a pay cut for me. But I'd rather have a kid than not, and I'm going to be there anyway. So take what you can get.
Yeah.
But yeah, just there's a lot of subtleties that kind of.
So by the time right
weird.
Before you closed, how many kids and how many adults did you have?
I probably had about 14 or 15 kids in total, and I was averaging like 6 to 8, and probably was averaging about 8 per night.
Okay.
And then the adults was really hard because I just had a lot of adults, but man, they would come once a month or less, like technically.
And again, like they cross train, or is it because of their jobs? Mostly because of their jobs.
Yeah. But it's just people are busy these days, and judo wasn't part of their lifestyle. Like when I was in college, it was Monday through Thursday, 4:30 to 6:30. Like that's what I'm doing, and that's what everybody else was doing. And you get older, they got kids, and they get sick, and they have health issues, and if they don't have health issues, their family does. So hey, I got to stay home and help my family out. And you go, okay, no, I totally get it.
I'm getting to that point myself. So
yeah, it's very reasonable. Like I totally understand it. But so then it's like I had probably about a total of like 18 or 19 adults.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like any given class was 2, like literally even 1. Like there were some nights where I'd be like teaching kids, and just no adults would show up, and I'd give it 10 or 15 minutes and be like, nah, I'm getting out of here. Like even if 1 shows up late, I'm not going to sit here for an hour and a half with 1 other person. So
it goes back to my question. If you were to redo this, would you charge more? Given the same, like if you knew you can end up with the same amount of people, like would you charge more?
Yeah, I would charge more. I think the hard thing, like if I was going to redo this though, the whole circumstance would be different. Like I would be in my own building, which immediately just like once you have hard bills over your head, you can easily justify like I have to charge this because I have to keep the lights on, and people go, oh well, that makes sense. But it's a small town. Everybody knows I was getting a good deal on that space. Everybody knows my bills aren't that much, And then 2, like if I redid it, I would make a way more focused effort. Which again, this is part of the issue. Is like I can't do this while doing real estate full time and strength and conditioning, and is like I would go do demonstrations at the local schools, right? I would go work out with the high school wrestling clubs and be like, hey, man, this guy can really throw. Like, maybe it's something we should do in the off season. And I did a little bit of that. Like, I went back to my old high school once and I went and watched them at their matches and the tournaments in town and support them and talk to them. And every wrestler under the sun told me they were going to come. They're going to come in the off season. Every coach was like, we're going to bring them. Yeah. And then it never happened. Or like I had one kid show up for like 2 or 3 months. Wrestling season started. He did that, dislocated his elbow in the medal match of state finals. And then he was out for 3 or more months. And then he was like, well, now I'm going to start prepping for wrestling season for 3 months. And then I'm going to be in wrestling season. And so it was just like, he never came back, And so there's a part where just I would make a more focused effort to do that stuff. Whereas the way it was, like I just did not have the time to do that without just blowing people's $400,000 real estate deals, which is totally unacceptable. So it's like, if I was going to redo it, I would take a much more measured approach to versus just hoping word of mouth spread and that the product was so good, people just naturally came.
That's the debate people have about like, oh, I can just do it part-time kind of thing. But it's like, no, you have to market it. It's a lot of work. And do you still think there's a demand for it, for judo in your community? Because you were saying like, well, we only got like 2 kids showing up some nights and everyone's going to other sports and the adults only show up once a week.
Yeah. There's somewhat of like, I've had a few phone calls since I shut down, like, hey, you're the judo guy, right? And I said, no, unfortunately I stopped, so there's like a demand for it, but it's not like such a strong demand in this community that it really makes a difference,
Yeah.
And then it's kind of hard because like people that really don't know or haven't done or don't care about the, subtleties and nuances of judo versus BJJ versus wrestling, for them, it's all pretty synonymous. So like there's a demand, and I can see that in the jiu-jitsu clubs, there's not a demand for judo specifically, right? It's just for martial arts. It's just for like something in a gi. It's for some sort of grappling. It's like, well, we want grappling that's not wrestling because the meat-headed wrestler picked on me in high school and I don't like wrestlers because of it. So let's go try the Asian,
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I pick on people all the time.
I didn't pick on people. I got picked on. But so there's as a whole, there's a demand for it. And I think nationwide, the demand's growing. Like I said, just looking at Reddit, I'm like, man, there's way more people talking about it, thinking about it, interested, but it takes one bad experience to not go well. And so it's just, man, it's a pretty tall order. Sorry, Juan, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just saying, like, so when you close this, now I'm getting off topic, not off topic. I just have these questions about stuff. It's just, so I know you say like you bought crash pads, you bought ropes, you bought all these things. What did you do with all your stuff did you sell it like to the wrestling guy and you took your mats? What did you do with all your equipment?
So like the footwork ladder and, the rice bucket, grip strength type stuff, that's all just in my home gym in my garage.
Okay.
The crash pad, my wife started doing judo last fall and she'd never done anything like it before. And so, I have the crash pad in my house. We say we're going to like throw each other on it, but we have it. The wrestler did offer, he was like, hey man, do you still have that? Like, I'll buy it from you. And I said, well, let me talk to my wife about it. Cause maybe we're going to still like use it just together. And he was like, dude, don't even ask her. Like, that's a cool thing. If you guys are doing that, that's super cool. So he was pretty understanding. He's been a really kind person to me. I really like that guy. Yeah. He wasted me at state quarterfinals senior year, but I was wrestling, not doing judo. So that's fair. But and then actually all of the actual tatami we were using were my father's. So I didn't actually buy those. So those are just stored back at his house now where they were to begin with. Because he essentially has a competition area his own, and then the university has a competition area. And so then once a year he would pack his competition area and host the tournament. But those were actually his. That was another like thing. Him and the jiu-jitsu guy don't get along, and they historically haven't, which again, like I get it, the way my dad is, like, I get it. And so when
make him like him anymore, probably.
Yeah. But it was tough. So my dad's like, yeah, here's all these mats, you can use them. And I didn't tell the jiu-jitsu guy this, but my dad says, hey, if anybody else is going to use these, you need to charge them rent. I'm going to charge rent. Like, this is business. You're going to do the business thing. Let's do it, but it's going to be business. And I was like, no, Dad, nobody else is using these. Are just for judo. I promise, it's fine. And he's like, okay, that's fine. And then the university was giving him a real runabout. There's all new administration, and they're going to change rooms, and they don't have mats and this and whatever. A lot of drama, a lot of stupid stuff. And so he asked me, he says, well, so what if I brought the university club over here and we would charge, and we'll pay rent, but it's university budget. That was the thing. The university was still giving him a budget. He says, we have it in the sports club funds. We could pay your guy rent, but what is it going to take for us to also do the university club twice a week? So I asked the jiu-jitsu guy, I says, hey man, what would you charge? Those are, that's a judo space, designated judo. There's no wrestling on, there's no BJJ. Like, he can come in the afternoons because it's university schedule and not muck up the parking and not be an issue, right? And the guy just straight up said no. He said, man, he said, dude, I don't like your dad. I have no interest in working with him. And I don't want him in my building. And I don't want none of it, just none of it. That's a hard no. He said, if you were going to, and then this is where I'm like, okay, it's like, I'm not into the whole like mafioso mentality, but there is a point where it's like, dude, now you're working directly against family and I'm in the middle, and that sucks. That just sucks, especially when those are actually his mats in our building that he's just donating for free. That like, it's like $15,000, $20,000 worth of mats that I'd have to buy, or that you'd have to buy and supply me because I'm paying you rent, like one way or the other. So I'm like, man, it's kind of a big favor to just fucking turn your nose up to, but whatever, I get it. And so he goes, if you take over the judo club for ISU, and if you're in charge of it and you're going to run it, then I would charge like $1,500 a month. So it was a completely unreasonable thing because that's just university money. So, but I was kind of like, like that number was so high. It was to the point where it was like, man, you're setting it that high, hoping it won't happen. Like you're setting it that high purposefully to like, so like that was another thing that
basically
like
saying this is my price.
Yeah. And on top of that, you have to jump through the hoops of now you got to run the university club. And I'm like, dude, in the daytime, I'm doing real estate. Like I don't have time to show up in the afternoons and teach for white belts that want to do judo. And they're super enthusiastic. I like all those people. Like I see them at the tournaments, but so there's this like adds to the whole thing. And I'm not one of those guys that's going to be like, oh man, you move against my family, therefore I'm going to burn your building down. But there's a point where I'm like, dude, man, I don't care if I drag your name through the mud, or like, I'm just going to tell my version of the story. And if it looks good, looks bad, if people want to ask me questions about it, like whatever, dude, I just don't even care. And I'm leaving the building. I'm not paying you rent. You're not getting money out of me. Like I'm over it. Like I'm over it all, man. And then, the thing is like 2 weeks after that conversation, there's the last like little, come on. 2 weeks after that conversation, you get the group message from we had a little, group message for all the program coordinators. And it's the jiu-jitsu club saying, hey, we're having like a big seminar here and we're going to have all these clubs from out of town. And like, there's just no way our mats are going to fit it. So can we use your two mats, the wrestling and judo, for this? And then of course I'm like, if I could have just lied to my dad about it, like, right, I could have just been like, oh, I didn't know, or whatever. And he would have never found out. It's not like he's looking through the windows trying to catch people. Yeah. But like, there's just a point of like honest integrity. And so I said, hey, unfortunately, like not everybody gets along. Some of those people are my dad. Some of those people are other people in this building. So unfortunately, those mats are very strictly designated for judo only. Otherwise, we have to charge rent. And they were like, that's okay. We don't need them that bad. Yeah. And it's just like, so like,
no, you did the right thing.
So it's like, I kept the integrity with my dad. I kept my end of the deal because my dad told me that. And it's like, so I sleep well at night knowing I did my part. But it's a crappy position to be in on both ends of that, no matter what. And then at the end of the day, it's like, we ask you a favor and it's a big no, and it's a big jump through every hoop. And then, but then you feel totally like fine and vindicated asking us for favors. You know what I mean? And it's just like, man, I don't know about that,
Goes back to what I said about the moral floor thing. So
right. Which, and one of the big reasons I disagree with that is that because my dad is the same way. And so if the roles were reversed, that's exactly how he'd be. And I know that. So I'm like, it's not even about judo or jiu-jitsu. That's just how some people are. Business people or not business people or
no, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. But again, I'm saying like I'm just saying like there's me and then there's my dad. And we're both judo people and classic. So that's what I'm saying. Like it's just as likely.
So there's just a quick side question, because I got a message from someone talking about how university clubs don't allow non-university people to train there. Is that true for your place?
That's currently correct with my dad's university.
So
there used to
how
be,
are you allowed in?
So I'm actually not, and it would just have to be like my dad has to look the other way, and I have to like
Okay.
act like. So there's a few things. One, it's kind of changed over the years just at Idaho State, but it used to be if you were an alumni, you could then still also be part of the program. You could say, hey, I'm an alumni, I paid $40 a year alumni fee, therefore I get to join the sports clubs. But then there's a whole point of like, well, it's really for the students, and so that's no longer the case at ISU. So it's like that used to be a loophole. The other loophole is technically because my dad like the university club is a USA Judo club, right? And it's sanctioned. So he can always like have a clinician come teach a clinic. And if the club officers sign off that like, yeah, that was like necessary for us to learn and grow, that's like a cool thing. So he can host a tournament and have non-university people show up. And he could have me at practice and be like, oh, this is like a clinician, but it's just like, can I go there twice a week like they're not going to pay that much money, you know what I mean? So it's like to do that paperwork. So there's some loopholes. Like I could pop in and you could flex it out and make that a thing, but I couldn't go there 2 to 4 days a week and do my own training, and the second a university kid gets manhandled by Team USA 275 pounds, and complains, then it's like, why is this guy even on the mat? And you say, well, he was teaching. He said, this guy's been on the mat every day this week. He's basically running the club. So it's kind of, like stifling.
So my next question is, when you closed, how did you break the news to the members and the parents, and where did you like redirect them to somewhere else, or you just like was like, whatever, like, I don't know, it's up to you guys?
I did. So the first thing is I had to get all the mats out of there and stuff like that. And then, essentially I did just send a long text message saying like, hey, I got some personal things in my life and club's not working out. Mat space isn't working out. So unfortunately I have to close, and it's currently like, I don't have plans to open again, or like, I don't, there's no like, oh, I'm going to close for 3 months and be back. Like I'm closing. I really appreciate your business. I appreciate who you were. I loved working with you, or, working with your kids,
so
or whatever.
You sent an individual message to your parents, not like a group.
Yes, correct. But it was like I copy and pasted like basically the same message. And I said, hey, if you're still interested in having your kids in grappling sports or on the mats, I would highly recommend this wrestling club. And I'd recommend this other jiu-jitsu club, and it's across town. And they have a judo black belt that's from Boise. But he doesn't like teach, but he's there. He teaches the kids. He doesn't teach judo, but it's like, hey, he's a judo guy and a jiu-jitsu guy, and he's a lifelong friend. I grew up, going to tournaments with him all the time and stuff. And then, like I totally did even say like, because there's just a point where it's like, like we're all in the same building. And so they obviously know that club is right there. Yeah. So I did make that the third recommendation. Was like, there's also, of course, you can check out this club that's and then you know what you're doing. You're at the same place you were at. So if that's easier for you and your kids, you can just show up to the same place at the same times, Yeah. And I had a pretty mixed like reaction. Some were, one parent just said, this is so heartbreaking, I'm sorry, and some parents said, hey, thank you for working with that kid. It was great. Like, we really like you. And thanks for the recommendations. We'll check it out. And some parents just never got back to me, stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So as of right now, do you have any plans to potentially start teaching again in any capacity? Like, not even opening your own club. Maybe you're going to start a judo for BJJ program in the BJJ club, or maybe you're going to move somewhere and teach in some other club. Like, do you have any plans to do that in general? I know it's kind of like early because you just had surgery, but
yeah.
Yeah, the doctor said 6 weeks, all right?
Yeah. And I'm at 6.5, so that's good.
Yeah.
No. So I do. I don't think I'd like really be able to stay away from judo just forever, the rest of my life. There's a part of me that likes to think I was that strong, but there's no way. It's totally like a deep-seated addiction that I'll never get rid of. So teaching, like I said, I do plan once I get, through physical therapy and get a little healthier and maybe hit the gym and kind of just get some general health back. I do plan to show up to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here in town and wrestling, there are like 3 or 4 different jiu-jitsu clubs in town, so I'm not like locked into the one or anything. And so I'll be on the mats, and then totally if it snowballs into like, hey, why don't you do some private lessons for me? Like, this is what we pay for private lessons in jiu-jitsu. Like, yeah, I'd be game for that. That works, for an hour every Friday afternoon. Like, I could flex that out. I would definitely still be open to doing like clinics and seminars for BJJ schools or for judo. If, anybody wants to have me out to their club for Saturday, half a Saturday, whole weekend, whatever, I'd be into that. And then just kind of low key, I've always kind of thought about living abroad for a year or two. And so has my wife. She's always been like, yeah, it'd just be cool to like do a year in college in Europe, right? And which obviously didn't happen, but it's kind of like, hey, we could revisit that. And so and then like in Europe, European Judo Union and various Olympic organizations, and in like Germany, they have the Bundesliga, B League professional teams. There's legitimate coaching jobs. Like, you could get hired and go just be a 30 to 40 hour a week coach and develop a program and develop athletes and have that kind of professionalized, like, yeah, I teach judo for a living, but I don't have to like run my own business and invest in commercial real estate to make that happen. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to learn how to file a 501c3 just to make ends meet. It's like, so that's kind of an option where it's like, well, let's pay our debt off. Let's kind of stabilize our lives, stabilize my health. And then we've considered moving back to Colorado. I like a lot of the people that I've made friends with there, and thought, man, I could end up teaching at those clubs or helping out or just practicing if and we've considered Washington, D.C. Like, I really like so far the relationship with Chris Round and his team at High Noon. So I've considered, like, we're like, yeah, kind of get out of Idaho and maybe move to DC and see what that looks like. But it's just kind
really
of a monstrous thing. Yeah. So it's like,
I used to
like
live there, so
yeah. And so that's kind of like a lot of those factors where it's just like, I really don't have those answers. Like, I could end up there. I could end up, but I told my cousins like years ago, and other family members said, don't ever be surprised if I move anywhere in the world at any time. Like, just know that that's kind of part of who I am. So I could maybe end up taking a coaching job in Europe. Maybe I move to DC where it's not actually for a coaching job, but I do end up coaching. And like that's like the main motivation to move there would be to be closer to Chris and his program and his athletes, and to be involved in whatever way I can.
Yeah. I want to bring Chris on to the show eventually.
Yeah, I was going to recommend it actually.
Yeah.
Unsolicited. I was going to say you should have him on.
Yeah. No, because I visited him last year. I mentioned to you before recording, and a lot of what he does is in class. Well, he wasn't teaching that day, but like a lot of what they do, I see during class. That one class I attended was really close to how I teach, and so I'm really interested in bringing him on. And we work for the same company, so I can send him a message on my company
business hours.
Yeah.
So.
Juan, do you have anything? Because I have 2 more questions. But
no, go ahead. Like, you answered pretty much all my questions stuff.
So I know you probably haven't listened to our other episodes, but I did mention this before, so you don't have to sign an NDA. One of my goals was to open like a co-op kind of thing. So essentially, my plan was to just rent the space, and then anyone who pays a membership fee is a member of the co-op, and they can get the keys, and they can just go in whenever they want, 24 hours. And people can run a class or seminar if they want to. It doesn't have to be specifically judo. It could be jiu-jitsu, wrestling, catch wrestling, sambo. And basically it's open mat all day, and then you can do whatever you want. And so obviously I'd have to iron out the details of who'd be in charge to make sure people don't go crazy. But I crunched out the numbers here for LA, and basically I would have to quit my job to make that a full-time thing and make it viable. Just like what you said, it seems like it's easy. Oh, I don't have to teach, but there's a lot more things involved. And I did realize, because I've seen other people do this for BJJ, and it's a lot easier to do it in a more, to summarize what I said, a red state. Let's just say that, right? So I consider Iowa a red state. Do you think that kind of business model would be viable there, or is that something you'd consider? Because you did say like, oh, I don't have enough help and all this kind of stuff?
Can't speak for Iowa.
Okay.
In
Sorry,
Idaho,
Idaho. I meant Idaho.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
extremely red state, so I do feel like it's fairly
Yeah.
synonymous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say definitely like it's just administratively and business wise and government regulation wise, it's super Western out here, very loosey goosey, very unregulated. So I would say that's probably viable, especially in the Boise, Meridian, Eagle area, Kuna. That place is huge. I think probably has the numbers to support that sort of a thing. And they have huge wrestlers and huge BJJ programs. So I think that would be pretty viable. And again, the main thing is going to be like, what do you need to cover your commercial real estate, you know? And so, yeah, if you inherited some land here and it was agricultural where you can just build whatever you want, and yeah, that'd be killer, you know? If you had to pay top tier prices for downtown Boise, then that would be pretty different. But I think it would be very doable. The main thing, of course, is lawyer up and get all of your liability coverage, man. But yeah, I think if you had that covered, if you had I would probably recommend a 2-tier system for waivers, electronic and a hard copy, just in case one gets missed, you know, and sign in on the iPad every time you come in. I would just say you'd have to have a strict, like, zero tolerance policy. Like, hey, you were working out here. I saw you leaving, but I noticed you didn't sign in on the iPad. Don't come back. Like, that's unacceptable. Like, we cannot have people in here that are unaccounted for, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I think if you covered those bases, I think it would be very doable option. Yeah.
The couple of examples I've seen where people who live in lower cost of living area, less litigative heavy places, more landlord friendly kind of places, and they tend to have like a main business, like they either work as a carpenter or a machinist or something, and then they have an extra space somewhere right next to the business.
Yeah.
So it's not that much more cost to just like lay out mats in that open area, and then like after work they just show up every few hours to like mop the place and clean the bathroom and stuff like that, and it's like it just makes it easier. So I was just thinking about that, but sadly that's not going to work for me. So yeah, that was my idea. So hopefully you can steal that idea and make it fruition.
Not stealing, he's giving it to you. He's offering it to you.
Yeah.
So my last question is for anyone else that's listening. I'm not going to specify like specifically like high cost of living, low cost of living area, because obviously it makes it very different. But do you have any recommendations or lessons learned that you tell other people who are interested in starting their own judo, specifically judo club?
Yeah, I would say really my main recommendation would be to go as deeply like formal as possible, in the sense like you should actually have a written business plan in place. That should include an exit strategy. That should include projected numbers. If those numbers change, you should adjust that in there, right? That should include, I think also formality is, because people always say like, oh, I have goals and I have dreams, and then there's people that are like, oh, a goal that's not written down is just a dream, right? And there's kind of these subtleties when you get deep into goal setting. Just that alone, just goal setting. So I would say write down your specific goals, write down the rewards of those goals, write down the negatives of not meeting those goals, write down the potential solution. Like, I need this many number of students. What if you don't hit that? Well, actually, I just didn't hit that this month, but next month I re-hit it, and I was above it before, and then I just had a bad month. Well, that's nothing to even worry about, right? If you're on your 3rd month in a row of not hitting your goal, then it's an issue. You should have that exit strategy. So the more formal you are, I personally think the better. The more organized, the more things that are written down, filed. You know what I mean? I think that would be the very first starting point. And when you're delving into that, especially like the goal setting part, you should discover like I said, in words, in communicable like ideas, not just like, oh, I feel like I can do this, right? I feel like I can do this because I have these credentials. I've seen this community. I've researched this business model. right? Like you should have more of that concrete reasoning. I feel like I should do this because it turned my life from an alcoholic, heroin addict, homeless kid off the streets into, leaner, cleaner, more comfortable, mentally healthy lifestyle. And I think other people could use that opportunity. So I'm going to build a club to give back and promote that, right? Like the more you discover that why, the more you actually learn to communicate it, the more you write it down, the better the whole process goes. Because then it's also easier to then nitpick your hard lines of, I will accept this from my business partner. I will not accept this from my business partner. I have to accept this because that's where the numbers are monetarily. But if this is the case, then I have to also find a new solution to rewrite everything. You know what I mean? So I would just say, like, line your, line your ducks up, man. Get them in a row.
Yeah.
Put the front end research. And that's hard when you don't have a business degree. You're not financially literate. You weren't brought up in a money household. You know what I mean? Like you don't have help. But like my local university, they have the Small Business Association of Idaho. It's a completely funded, and you just get resources from professionals to help you write a business model, to help you find solutions, to help you work those details out. So, ask other successful business people, even if they're contractors and they're a good friend of yours, and you say, how do you run your business? And the one thing I'll say is then probably be wary and try to double, triple check every piece of information you get. Because sometimes people don't want you to know their business model. Sometimes they lie to you to make it sound better than it is.
Yeah.
Like I said, people push narratives for whatever reason. So you can't always just take it at face value, but you might learn, hey, that one trick really makes a difference. And that's not even about judo. It's just a business trick. It's just the other thing I would say, and this is a kind of a continual theme I just keep seeing and reworking, both a small business, because I have a lot of friends that run their own businesses here in Pocatello, and big business. And you hear it all the time, like, oh, we bought this product and then it's just like terrible. And why'd you buy it? Well, we didn't know. And the person selling us, So I would say the main thing is, if you want to be successful, if you want to last, the two biggest skills you're going to need and you're going to have to figure out is general salesmanship. That could mean a lot of things. That could mean like slimy emotional manipulation, lying, cheating, stealing. That could also just mean having pre-rehearsed pitches of, this is why judo's good. This is what I bring to you. This is your product. And this is why it's worth this much. And ultimately, here's my reviews on Google and Yelp. And here's the 5 stars. And you go talk to those parents and get their opinion, right? So, but if you have a pre-rehearsed, like, this is what judo's good for, this is how it affected me, whatever, just your salesmanship in total is huge for any business owner or anybody in the business world. And then the second thing is financial literacy. Know how to crunch the numbers, know when to spend money on a crash pad because it totally enhances the roughness of judo and the user experience. Know when to buy the cheaper mats or the cheaper subfloor. Know when to buy the cheaper real estate space, or you know what I mean?
Would you actually change the way that you train and teach based off of like kind of floors you have?
Probably, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we were in that building. So in the very first building before we had moved, it was just jiu-jitsu tatami laid on cement. Yeah. It was wicked. That's unforgiving.
How it started. Yeah,
not even hardwood, just cement. Yeah, like, man. And then we got to the new building. We did the like fake spring floor where you do the little foam blocks on the plywood and sheet it all together. And that's pretty forgiving. That made a big difference. And you could see it, like if you watch, the adults warm up and they're running, you could see them out bouncing.
That's what we have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absorbing a lot of shock. I did look into and talk to like Brian Olson and at Fuji and Jimmy about actual, Russian birch spring floor, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was like $20,000 or something. And that's, like I said, as business owners, like, man, if you can't afford that, then you got to fake it out with the other ones, and that resulted in probably 15 hours of me personally gluing these blocks, flipping wood over. And, and I had one friend to help me. Yeah.
I built them.
It's a cool project. It's cool. Yeah. But it's a lot of work and you're up and down a lot. And it's like, man, I'm alone here. And the wrestlers put their whole thing together. They had like 15 volunteer parents and their thing went together in like 2 hours. And it was like they had so many people that it was moving so fast that they had to like, oh, we jumped the process. We got to move back and do it right. And they almost did it wrong, you know.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, man, I'm alone in here trying to build my business up and little things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I definitely would change Nage Komi, or like, let's get more Uchikomi, or let's get more pickup Uchikomi. It's not, you know, Randori is still always going to do the same amount of Randori.
Yeah.
But definitely I'll change the drills and how many times I show a throw.
Yeah. Do you have any more? I cut you off a little bit there. So do you have any more tips on suggestions for others?
Yeah, I guess the only other last thing would be specifically in judo is network and say like, hey, Anthony, Juan, how are you guys doing your club? What's been working for you? What do you think's been working, and what are you finding frustrating? And then call Chris round and say, hey, what's been working for you, and what's frustrating, and how's it going? And look at the successful clubs, and then I would also say look at the try hard clubs, and you'll find a lot of things that are overlapping and a lot of things that aren't, and then that's what really defines what needs to make the difference. You know, say, oh, the overlapping theme is everybody's kind of starting out in a jiu-jitsu club because we don't have the capital. Say, and this is how that's working out. So maybe that's going to be a big indicator of how you move forward, you know?
Yeah.
I would say network and talk to other club owners or club managers for sure.
Yeah. And especially on the last point you said, especially like, for example, we have a unique situation with our community center. Then the suggestions you get from us wouldn't necessarily work for you who you're not coming out from a community center.
Yeah.
So different constraints. Like we don't have to worry about parking, for example, which is also an uncommon thing in LA. But I really want to emphasize it's really interesting that you talked about the business plan and everything you said before, because I don't think anyone else would actually suggest that. And not to like rain on your parade a little bit, but I feel like for the listeners out there who heard what you said and understand the importance of it, they are the same type of people as you that would already like think like that. But I think for everyone else, they'd just be like, I don't need that. You know, I just need, I'm a national champion. People just come because they hear my name kind of thing. And the main thing is for those that don't understand what you're doing, what you're talking about, or can't comprehend it, they're the ones that need to talk to other people to ask for help. Like you said, go to the local small business bureau for them to get help. And a lot of people are really reluctant to get help on that kind of thing. So, but it's really important what you said, but I don't know how much
that's going to land so much.
Yeah.
No, I think it's very insightful what you said. It's a lot of stuff, like some deep, dirty, dark stuff people don't want to talk about, people don't want to bring about. People only want to talk about sunshine and rainbows. And it's not always like that. You know, I'm really thankful that you came onto the show and told us your experience. And hopefully people that listen to this maybe be going through the same thing or thinking about this. I think it opens up their eyes and gives them the idea of like, oh, okay, I do have to think about this. I shouldn't just believe everyone at face value. I need to do more research myself. Yeah, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say who, those kind of obvious if you are in the area, but we know someone who's like a really decorated judoka that started a judo program here pre-COVID. I mean, COVID did kind of put a hamper on things, but he no longer has a club, and this guy's like a Olympic medalist. Like, so like it goes to show like just having good judo is not enough. You need a good business plan and business sense. So
So thank you for being on the show. Is there anything, I know you're doing a real estate thing, not the judo thing no more. So do you want to promote your real estate, like what
you're not on Instagram anymore. You don't check Instagram. So
I don't know. It'd be like what to promote now. I promote your real estate, throwing good deals out there, Let me tie a Toshi into this house.
Yeah.
I'm going to Uda Nage that sale.
Let's make this next deal Ippon. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. We ain't going for that Wazari sale. I'm cutting it down. Wazari sales.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, I appreciate it. Anyways, it's good to talk judo. I don't have a lot of people in my community to really talk, especially the deeper level of whatever, any of it, running a business, teaching. So I appreciate being on the show and appreciate y'all running it. Anyways, I did listen to that more recent one with Robert Erickson. That was really interesting and stuff. And
that's the one thing I forgot to ask. Like, what do you think about the Olympic Training Center out there. Well, I guess, is it the Olympic Training Center? I forgot. But
Yeah.
what do you think of the whole thing being there, not in Colorado?
So I'm going to start off with definitely just the well, I can't think of it right now, but I guess I'll just discredit myself as I'm pretty far removed from the political situation and from a lot of the characters at play, right? So all my information is very secondhand. But initially, my first thought is, so one, I heard him say that it's like a state-funded thing and it's paid for by the state and he's paid by the state. He's not actually hired by USA Judo. I heard from somebody else in USA Judo that's like currently coaching national level people. They said, well, the USOPC pays him, not USA Judo. And so I think that's a really subtle, but a very like important nuance that I don't have the answer to, but it piques my curiosity. Is he paid by USOPC, USA Judo, or the state of North Carolina? Because those are wildly different. Like the whole approach is different depending on what that answer is.
Don't quote me for it, but I think my guess is it's some sort of subsidy tax benefit thing. And then it kind of launders around. So probably the truth is somewhere in between, like where the USOPC pays them, but then they get a tax deductible, whatever, from the state or something. I don't know. Yeah.
They've maxed out their USA Judo tax deduction, so now they got to make a third entity to. So my main thing, I guess, I'm curious is with that, or like not curious, but just is what I think about is the pattern, because this isn't the first time this has happened. This isn't the first person to be in that position. They did the exact same thing in Texas, maybe 2008, 2010-ish in Texas with Israel Hernandez, right?
Mm-hmm.
Moves from Cuba. He's here to coach judo. He's got a coaching job. He's got a visa and all that. And we had some athletes like Jake Larson, Katie Sell. They were both down there. There's some other athletes that moved there to integrate into that program. And they were national bangers. They were Pan Am team members and stuff at the time. They were legitimate Olympic hopefuls. And for whatever reason, that funding ran out. That whole program fell apart. They didn't have enough performers to justify it. I don't know exactly what happened, but it fell apart.
I know what happened, but I'll tell you. I know what happened, but I'll tell you after we record.
Okay. Yeah. Totally. And yeah. So it's kind of like what's the pattern here? What's the why? Are we beating a dead horse? Did it not work out last time for an acute reason, or did it not work out because it's the same? Like, are we following the same pattern, or are we changing it this time? Right. So then it's kind of like, if we're changing it, then maybe it's better, maybe it's not. If we're not changing it, then it's just another loop-de-doop. Like, it's kind of virtue signaling on both USOBC and or USA Judo of like, hey, we're doing something to make it different. Look, we hired this guy, he's up here, and we're making momentum. It's not our fault that you judo guys suck because you won't move to the coaches, right? Like they kind of always want to justify that it's not their fault because they did their part.
But you don't think there's a grain of truth in that? Like, I mean, if they say, like, for example, Robert Erickson said, the one thing we can do to help us increase our chances greatly to win is to get everyone together.
Yeah. So I agree. That I agree with him on that, and that's a lot of people have been saying that for a long time. So here's what the issue is, though. They hired a great person and they put him in this facility, and it's all good, but you are now hoping and asking athletes who are already paying tens of thousands and disrupting their entire lifestyle. And if they have, hopefully not, but if they have any semblance of pattern like I did, they're literally ruining their financial security well into their 30s. And unless you're now then asking them, I say just depending on the situation, and hopefully not, but so then you're asking them to now make another lifestyle adjustment, move all the way out to North Carolina for a program that, if the pattern persists from the past, is only actually going to be there for 2 years. And you're actually then going to lose this coach. So what was that all about? And you got to leave the coach that has you brainwashed into thinking, they're the ones that's going to make you the Olympic champion. So then, so if, and you guys talked about judo, this always gets thrown around Judo Canada. Let's just follow their model. But they're playing with a whole different deck of cards. They had funding for that. They got paid. So if you're going to provide housing and food and allowance and travel funding and all that stuff, then you can easily say, like, you don't get to go compete unless you're part of the program, right? Or you pay your own way, and that's your choice. But like to just drop a training center wherever, it's not very commutable to like other places that these athletes are living, disrupt your whole lifestyle, maybe lose your local sponsors, maybe lose, like
coaches.
New York Athletic Club or something, right? Because they're very inundated with certain coaches and certain teams, it's like you're going to lose. So it's like, we did our part, but it's like not like that was a terrible execution of doing your part. And it's very unrealistic for an athlete in their mid to some 20s to manage that type of a move just because, and again, not in any way discrediting, but like just because certain coach A, B, C moved there, you know what I mean? And so it's kind of like, it's really not set up for success. It's kind of a farce that is very politically charged. And
there's definitely lots of politics to it. But I should have asked Robert Erickson this question, but I'm pretty sure this is the case, and it was heavily implied, is he's not just, obviously the Olympic medal is the goal, but he's also setting an infrastructure down and training other people to be able to coach the way he does, so that
to be high performance.
So he can step away and this infrastructure will still be in place, which is what he did in Sweden, right? Like he talked about how he set up this infrastructure and convinced the government to do this and that. So I think that's the case. Maybe we'll have him on again. And ask.
Yeah. Well, and I think that would be great.
The system's working out. We will.
What was that, Juan?
I was saying that we probably will have him on like in a year or so. Ask him how the system's working out and stuff. But as you talk about the commute thing and where you're moving your family, like I always thought, like talk about an episode, I think we talked about before during, of like, why didn't you put it, and they said because the state funded them, but it's like, why don't you put it like in a big judo community state, like New York or Los Angeles or Boston or something, like a big judo.
And housing's more expensive and nobody's paying for that.
I think it's a combination of housing's more expensive, there's less distractions, the state's funding it, and also it's relatively a neutral territory when it comes to the politics of all the top performance dojos. And then someone else brought it up, is also the East Coast is easier to fly to Europe with less of a time zone change for athletes to adjust, compared to if your West Coast is flying to Japan to compete, you're going to be in for a huge change. Plus it costs more to fly to Japan than it is to fly to Europe. So.
I would agree. East Coast is definitely the place. I mean, traditionally more tournaments are held there than in Japan and Korea and stuff. And even like the Western Asia, when they're in Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan, it's like you fly to London or Frankfurt and then fly further east to Asia. You know what I mean? So it's rarely do you actually go through the Pacific. But I was also going to say, like, part of all of that is I would be suspicious that there's some incentives, because the USOPC has a real big, again, just like kind of moral virtue signaling thing with like athletes that give their whole lives and do this, and then they leave and then they have nothing. There's not enough jobs at the USOPC to just hire athletes from every sport, right? Every hopeful can't get a job, and it's not feasible. And so they have a huge push for education and for like, we support our athletes. We want you to get educated, and so if you got, part of that whole thing when the email came out, like, hey, we're doing this program, you can apply as athletes. And we highly encourage, it was really like heavy on we highly encourage you also apply to the school, and you do the local school and you'll get it for a good price instead of out-of-state tuition. And so that also makes a difference, like where they drop certain training centers of, well, what university is going to be a little more happy to accommodate USOPC's like random athletes coming in and out.
UNC is a great school. Like,
totally. And so that might also make a difference versus certain schools might be less like that, or say, we'll do it for a certain cost, and the USOPC goes, that's too much, so it's just interesting. But I just want to finish with like, I like the idea overall. I do like Robert Erickson. I've seen him on a whole bunch of different trips, fought the Swedish guy a few times while he was coaching him and stuff. And I like his work. I like his ideas. So I am hopeful and excited to see if much comes of it. I'm wary that, again, if athletes don't go work with him, then
The way
Or
the
coaches
way I
don't
see
work with
it,
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
the way I see it is it's better than what was the alternative, which is we do nothing and pray.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep having
Yeah.
4 different training centers that nobody gets
Yeah.
along at, and totally.
Yeah. I still have more questions, but I got it. I know it's been a long episode.
Now I'll go take care of your wife. Yeah,
It's my
birthday.
wife's birthday, so she's actually opened the door earlier and was check if I'm still alive. And we still got to do the intro and outro with Juan. But I don't know if we asked this question when last time we interviewed you, but we started asking people for their walkout song for like the World
You
Championships.
did ask that.
Okay,
Yeah,
And I actually did, since we last talked, I actually did do a fight to win in Denver, and I did use it as a walkout song. It was Chewbacca by Supernova.
Okay, is it going to be the same song this time?
I think I'll change it. And I remember thinking about it. I was like, no, I'm going to do a different song. And I had one picked and I forgot. And so at this point in time, I don't know.
Okay.
But it would be a different song if I did another walkout song. Yeah.
All right. We're just going to have you back again so I can ask my other questions and get your actual walkout song.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to. I appreciate it. This is really good. So thank you both and have a wonderful weekend and everything like that.
Yeah, stay in touch because don't go missing on us again because I knew you had a lot of health issues. I was just like, did he like die? Like,
you go dark on me. I get scared nowadays. All right.
I'll send you a check-in message, text message once every 3 months or so, quarterly updates.
I want a photo of you with a newspaper holding date.
Yeah, today's date. Yeah.
What a great interview that was.
That I will agree with you. That was one of the best interviews we had. I actually I had so much more to talk about and it feel like I was just catching up with him. I never met Ajax in person, but it just felt nice to see him that he's doing well. He's taking care of his health, like fixing all the issues he had from his competition career. And it's sad to hear that his dojo closed down because I do want to like visit and stuff, but seems like he's happier with his life now due to that. And I mean, judo is always going to be there. So it does make me, I already talked about it, but it does make me rethink like how to prioritize my time with judo and life and everything. So,
well, for someone like him, international competitor, judo family, grew up in it, like you'll take sabbaticals in your life, but you're always going to come back. I don't think he can stay away for that long, and he was even talking about even at surgery that he was, like, he doesn't want to teach him nothing right now, but hey, you never know what might happen in the future. Might want to teach part-time or one class a week or just do seminars. I do once a month class at this BJJ place, but it's sad about his gym, but hey, shit happens, life happens and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. All right.
That's why I wanted to do this episode. Because people love to interview people just because they succeeded or whatever, but like failures happen too. Like that's part of reality, right? And he did everything right in a sense. I would say he did everything right that he could do. And he's actually more well prepared than a lot of other successful owners I know. But sometimes luck is part of it, right? He just got dealt different set of cards than some other people. He literally just started it. Well, I guess he had help from his dad with the mats technically, but that's a different set of cards. Like some other people have family money or they are able to get a good deal somewhere or they just had money in general. But he had to deal with a different set of problems. And I think he did well. I mean, I'm sure he didn't give us a straight answer, but I'm sure he's going to start up another club. That's my bet once he settles down.
You can't get away for that long. For judo, we just pull you back in. Every time you think you're out, we pull you back in somehow,
Yeah.
So that was a good interview. So Anthony, is there anything else you want to talk about before we cut it off?
No, we're going to have, there's a while where we're like, we don't want to just become, there's a while where we said we don't want to become just another interviewing podcast, but we do have a lot of great guests lined up for the next few episodes. Maybe we'll space it out. Like, so it's not interview. Maybe we'll space it out. I don't know. But yeah, we'll look forward to it. I don't want to give away anything or say who we're going to bring on without confirming first.
confirmation.
So, yeah.
You never know who's going to come on the podcast. All right.
Yeah. Maybe we're going to have Johnny Depp. I don't know.
Yeah, Johnny, he does some judo, doesn't he? He did judo in didn't Jack Sparrow do some judo? I think he did Tomonage. Maybe.
All right.
All right. So with that, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me, the GRA_Juan on Instagram. You follow Anthony at Anthony Throws on Instagram. You follow us on Instagram at Tatami Talk. You want to send us any emails, things you want to talk about, questions, tell us how dumb we are, tell us how great we are. It doesn't matter. You go to TatamiTalk@gmail.com. Is that oh yeah, we got the threads also. Tatami Talk at Threads.
I've been getting a lot more criticisms and they're actually constructive criticisms or disagreements. So I'm glad you guys are sending in those emails, as long as you keep it like no death threats. I haven't gotten a death threat in a while, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I like it. It just means the podcast is growing. Like it's a lot of what we said are just our opinions. So it's not like saying I'm right, you're wrong kind of thing. But
and the last one that I care about the most is the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Tatami Talk on YouTube. Watch our shorts, watch our longs, watch our mediums, watch everything, please. Yeah. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Like always, smash that like button.
Yeah. We should make a short of what Ajax said in the end. I think what he said was really important. And it's probably not going to get a lot of views and probably going to get a lot of shit. But I think it's good to make a short out of it so people can see it.
Hey, what I like about Ajax is that he's a very honest guy, you know? That's what I like about talking with them. You know, he doesn't blow smoke up your ass.
Yeah. All right.
So with that, don't forget to
start a judo club.